All right, let's do a little audio check. Kyle, we start off by doing vocal exercises, so I'll start do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. All right, Jamil, you're next.
Do, re, mi.
Okay, she's going to cut it short, but that came through fine. Kyle?
Doe, a female deer.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, there we go.
Is that the deer's gender or the deer's sex?
Oh, my God. Let's not.
April Cromer wants to know.
I thought gender was a mental illness.
It's a female. Can't you see it?
See, you could tell he took notes from our episode.
He did.
He took notes. Very good. Welcome to episode 60 of
Yay.
Black, White, and Blue in the South, the podcast discussing Democratic politics with
A southern what?
a Southern flair.
I wanted you to say flair.
I'm Bill Kimler,
I'm Jamil Brooks.
and we're coming to you from Greenwood, South Carolina, a little red county in a very red state.
Gosh.
If you like what you hear and think others ought to be listening as well, then you need to hit pause right now and leave a rating for our show. Write a little review. Tell your friends about us. Follow us on social media. Or better yet, stock our public schools with Narcan. You know what Narcan is?
Yes.
Narcan is...
It is supposed to help, I don't want to say revive you, but revive you if you OD.
It's a nasal spray specifically for opioids, including heroin, fentanyl, oxycodone, hydrocodone. They put this Narcan in places where people could be overdosed, and it can save them instantly. It could save a life.
Yes.
We need to stock our schools with Narcan.
Why do you say?
Well, why am I suggesting? Because the Director of Health and Human Services for our nation,
Help me.
Robert F. Kennedy,
Help me.
said the following. You ready for this?
Yeah.
When I was at the bottom of my class, I started doing heroin. I went to the top of my class. Suddenly I could sit still and I could read.
So we know RFK Jr. is not going to listen to anybody but himself. So since heroin helped him get to the top of his class, I could expect heroin to be at all of our public schools within the next year or two.
Did he say
Mark my words.
suddenly I could read?
Yes. Yeah, he wasn't able to read before heroin.
Oh, my gosh.
So the pro-heroin front, and you can believe all the MAGA supporters are going to be right there alongside of them. Yay, heroin. So get the Narcan out to our schools right away.
God.
Let us know what you think. Good God, what could you possibly think about that? Let us know what you think by dropping us a note at blackwhiteblueinthesouth@gmail.com. Send us your comments, questions, and topic ideas. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Mastodon, and Blue Sky. So go check us out. And look at those award-winning show notes where you can find links to all of those platforms, as well as links to news articles we're going to cover today. So check that out.
The dude said, suddenly I could sit still.
I'm sorry, do I need to play that video again for you?
No, but that thing is just resonating. You are...
Those are his words. There's no faking that voice, by the way.
No,
That's him.
That's him. Suddenly I can sit still, and suddenly I could read. I started
I
doing
went
heroin.
from the bottom of my class to the top of my class once I started doing heroin.
And
that
this
was
is
his
who
interview.
we want to lead us?
No, we
from
don't
a
want
health-
him. He's already there.
No, but those that voted for Trump supported that initiative.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's
Yes.
go. My bad. Let's go.
Did I start us off on a good note? Get that Narcan. That's all I can say. Well, Jamil, we had a nice spring break where we took some time off from recording.
Yes.
We did not record Easter Sunday, so we took a break. Did you enjoy the best of episode that we put out during that spring break? Did you listen to that?
I always enjoy the best of because you always have like hidden treasures in there.
Yes.
So always.
I had so much fun making it. I was sitting in my office just giggling as I was putting that together, especially the video version.
Oh,
The
goodness.
YouTube video feed of that last best of episode, I
Yeah.
was able to dig up archived footage never before seen or published before.
Gosh.
That just had me in tears.
See, and I am a podcast off the phone person, so I love to let it play, and then
Yes.
I'll go like, "Oh, okay, wow." But the YouTube always does bring it to life.
It does.
Yeah, you're right.
It's your face. It's your face that brings it to life. The look on your face when I bring up stuff like, hey, put Narcan in our public schools,
Yeah.
that's what makes the YouTube video
Yeah.
worthwhile. Well, we have been focusing almost exclusively on South Carolina politics these past few months, from the budget to interviewing Representative Heather Bauer. And by the way, thank you, Representative Bauer. That was a fantastic episode.
Yes.
The comments and feedback we've gotten on that episode are through the roof.
Good job.
She has also, I saw on the social feeds, launched her re-election campaign already.
She sure did.
So if you have a couple of shekels to throw her way, go to her Facebook page.
Support her.
This is the, not the one, but she is certainly a shining light in the Democratic Party in South Carolina.
Working definitely for the people, so help her out.
Well, this week, we will have a mix of national and state politics as we interview two guests. We'll have with us Kyle Freeman, who is running for United States Senate representing South Carolina.
Yes.
And then we'll hear from Sylvia Wright, who is running for South Carolina Superintendent of Education.
Yes.
Both are very interesting candidates, and I can't wait to get to speak to both of them.
Yeah.
But first,
For up-to-the-minute reports, stay tuned to this station. Now the news.
what has happened in the nation over the past 4 weeks since we last recorded, maybe even 8 weeks since we talked about national topics? Well, we have two guests today, so we don't have time to go deep into any news item. But what I wanted to do was take just a couple of minutes and brainstorm with you what off the top of your head are things that you're going to remember from these past 8 weeks about what has happened in our country from a national perspective.
Continued embarrassments. I would say the one that I thought I would never have to say out loud would be his behavior when he went to the services for the Pope passing.
Oh, sleeping at the Pope funeral?
And then Lindsey Graham even saying, hey, keep an open mind to maybe allowing Trump to be the Pope. Those pictures floating have been horrific. And then the things, of course, that are near and dear to me is when you start to cut funding for food programs that impact the elderly society as well as children.
Yes.
So those cuts have just been detrimental.
Off the top of my head, I will never forget our Secretary of Education nationwide, Linda McMahon, mixing up A1 with AI, where she went on a recorded broadcast touting her A1 initiatives in elementary schools nationwide. She says, this A1's an amazing thing. And this is who's leading our education department.
It is. You know what I said on that before we go? I don't think he had a bad idea with accomplishing his goal. And what I mean by this is Trump did the right thing. You put people who don't care about the programs that you want to slice, you put them in control of those programs, and slicing it, you won't get any resistance. So you put someone like McMahon over education, perfect person. She has no value for her. You put someone like Kennedy over health and human services, then of course, this is someone who has no value for her. He comes with ideas that are not even scientifically backed. And so, those programs can be cut because who's going to buck the system?
Jamil, it's not even just a matter of putting somebody who's not competent in charge. It's putting somebody whose philosophy is diametrically opposed to the mission of that department. It's like saying, hey, we have an open spot for president of the NAACP. Let's get a KKK Grand Dragon involved.
Grand Dragon up for deck. Yeah.
Right. That's exactly what's happened across our departments.
Yeah.
So that's one that stuck in my mind. The other is the sad illegal deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. We were talking about and had seen reports of people illegally deported prior to this news article. People just grabbed off the streets and sent out of the country who were here legally.
Because you look like.
Got no due process, and that's a word that should be in everybody's minds at this point.
Yeah.
But that was a perfect example where due process was completely done away with. And then since then, rather than admit a mistake, the administration has doubled down and have convicted him in the court of public opinion to the point where Donald Trump stupidly and doubled and tripled down on his claim that the letters MS-13 were on this guy's knuckles when clearly it was not.
Yeah.
And he refused to let that go.
Yeah. I saw the Associated Press has an article that's out, and the headline just goes to show how Donald Trump is saying that he's not sure that he truly backs the due process.
Right. Oh, he was asked just yesterday, do you believe that your job is to support the Constitution, support and defend the Constitution? And his answer was?
No.
I don't know. He said, I don't know.
His actions show the answer is no.
Exactly. The last thing that will stick in my mind from these past 48 weeks was just how tumultuous the stock market has been. Ooh. You know, I've been a 401k investor since my 30s, so I've got 20 plus years, and I have never seen a string of months, aside from when COVID hit and the last time Trump was in office, where the value of my investments have just gone down week to week, month to month, way down.
So you're watching it. You're brave.
I watch.
Most people will just turn away and just say, when it finishes doing what it's doing, I'll check it.
Well, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not thinking about retiring that very afternoon.
Yeah.
I was like, I just want to retire. Let me check that for. Oh, I can't retire. Damn it.
Don't do it now.
There is a clip here from a stock market analyst, a guy who has studied it for years. He's come up with a very interesting observation about watching stock market trends recently. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's watch this.
Okay.
Yo, what's up, finance fam? A lot of volatility in the stock market this week, so I'm hopping on here to help people who only watch Fox News understand what's happening in the market. Let's get started. Real simple formula. When the stock market is down, Fox News only covers trans people playing sports. That's how you know we're bleeding red. I've looked at thousands of hours of this, and let me give you a tip. The more obscure the sport, the worse the market is doing. If they're covering a trans swimmer in the NCAA, normal market territory. No need to panic. But this week, we got a trans fencer at the Cherry Blossom Tournament in Maryland. A lot of Fox coverage on this, which means the Dow is down a full 4%. But just yesterday, they're covering a trans athlete playing disc golf. That's a pretty obscure sport. It's iPhone footage, there's frisbees, 7% market dip minimum. Doesn't stop there. The market's got worse. We got trans pool players, and not swimming pools, like pool table pools, like what you find in bars or at rich kids' basements. That means 9% dip. But wait, this was in the UK. This is an obscure sport not in America. We're down 12%. Can it get worse?
No, but I think he's on to something.
Was from 6 months ago, so that's a minimum 15% dip, bear market territory. If you see Fox News covering a trans person kicking a hacky sack, the market is cratering. 20% dip. In France, 30% dip. The footage is from 2 years ago, full-blown depression. Stay smart out there, folks. Your boy Koss. Money.
Oh my gosh.
Do you see what the logo on the upper left?
What was it? I can't. Oh, yeah.
This is from the Daily Show.
Yeah.
So this is certainly tongue-in-cheek, but boy, is there a ring of truth there?
Yes, there's a correlation. I believe he's on to something.
I believe so as well.
I believe he's on to something. I'm going to watch Fox News just to see what sport they're talking about.
That's right. Well, at this point, Jamil, I am very proud and honored to welcome to our airwaves Mr. Kyle Freeman, who is running for U.S. Senate of these United States, right? Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so these United States as a representative from South Carolina. That is correct, too.
That is also correct.
I'm always fact-checking. We are about facts here at Black, White, and Blue in the South.
We are.
So, Kyle, where did you come from today? How far did you travel to come speak with us in person?
I came all the way over from Columbia, which isn't too far. Columbia is a great place to live.
That's the city,
yes.
right? Not the Columbia where we were deporting people to, right?
Correct.
Okay,
He might still be trapped.
He might.
Yeah, I came from Columbia. It's a great place to have the headquarters of the campaign and to be based out of because I can go basically anywhere in the state.
Hey, tell us a little about yourself personally. Let's get to know Kyle Freeman, the person, before we dive into Kyle Freeman, the candidate.
Yeah.
Okay. I come from a military family. My mother was a lieutenant commander in the Navy, and her father was a 2-star admiral in the Navy. My father was a master chief in the Navy. He did 3 tours in Vietnam. Everybody on my mother's side of the family were all naval aviators. So we've got this nice, long, proud history.
Had you ever considered entering the military yourself, given your parentage?
I did, and I messed up my paperwork at MEPS, unfortunately, and it was really difficult to undo that mistake.
I don't know what that means.
So,
paperwork at MEPS.
MEPS is when you go to apply, you go to MEPS, and that's where they do your physical, and they check your eyesight and all of that, and actually admit you into the military. But they also do a round of paperwork to make sure that your background checks out and that your mental acuity is correct and that you don't have disorders and stuff. And one of the questions was specifically, did you ever go see a psychiatrist? And I said yes, because when I was going into middle school, I went to a private middle school, and they had an entrance exam just for placement purposes, just to see, like, because it was they could personalize your learning to you and all of this. So I sat down with a psychologist, and
school psychologist is not the same as a psychiatrist.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that because I was 10 at the time, or however old, and nobody corrected me until after I had messed up my paperwork at MEPS. But I don't regret it too much because I was going into the military for all the wrong reasons at that time. So he was actually born Kyle Freeman O'Donnell.
Okay.
And so my grandfather was Admiral DeWitt Freeman. He's an incredible man. He had 3 children, my mother, and Gary Freeman and Bill Freeman. And Gary has 2 daughters and a son, and his son is named Matthew. And Matthew Freeman was a captain in the Marine Corps, also a naval aviator, and there's a wonderful family story.
I'll be honest with you, I'm lost in the family tree at the moment. There's a lot of people.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
The point of the matter is the only person that would be able to carry the Freeman name was Matthew Freeman, and he was killed in the line of duty in Afghanistan. And he saved the lives of everybody that was under his command, and he got the Bronze Star for it. And it was incredible bravery, but I felt like that was a terrible way for the Freeman lineage to end. And so on my wedding day, before they introduced my wife and I to the crowd, I snuck out to the Freeman table, and I asked for their blessing to change my last name to Freeman instead of O'Donnell, and only to find that they had been secretly wanting me to request that, but didn't want to put pressure on me because they figured it was my decision. So
That's amazing.
now I have 2 sons with the Freeman last name, Lincoln and Franklin, and both named after presidents.
Wow.
So mission accomplished.
That is really interesting. I never would imagine a family expecting a request for a name change. Like I approached my mom to see if I could change my name to Gates or Buffett, one day to be able to inherit something. She said, no, you're stuck at Kimmler. You'll die poor as a Kimmler.
Gates and Buffett would have made sure you didn't get anything anyway.
Yeah, that's probably true. Well, that's interesting. And so you are married. Congratulations for making it 8 years. You have beaten most of the United States in that regard. So
That's
well done.
a depressing statistic.
It really is. And I saw that you were married, or you had proposed in front of the Magic Castle in Disney World.
Yes, that is correct.
What a dream.
At midnight, specifically.
Oh.
Wow, at midnight.
Yeah, that story's rather crazy.
So that explains why all the staff were in the background trying to kick you out. It was like, hey, we're trying to shut down here, guys.
Actually, it was open late for some special event. I can't remember what it was. But we were down there when Hurricane Matthew was about to hit. My current wife, my girlfriend at the time, she's a teacher in Columbia. And our hotel room was right above a jewelry and art shop. So my mother and I went while she was asleep and bought the engagement ring at that shop.
Oh.
Wow.
And
That's
proposed to her
sweet.
that night.
Wow.
That's sweet.
How about that?
Yeah.
I think one of the appeals to your campaign that will distinguish you from any other candidates out there is that you come across as a regular guy.
Yes.
With regular guy interests. What are some of those interests that you have?
Well, I'm really big into movies. I like video games. I like problem solving and puzzles. Like I solve Rubik's Cubes and do, magic tricks and things like that. I go from like hobby to hobby. I've got a long-term project where I'm slowly collecting one of every element on the periodic table.
Okay, you let me know when you got some uranium in your back pocket.
That's kinda
I
cool.
have uranium already.
That's phenomenal.
Oh, wow. That's kind of cool.
I actually came across a post Kyle made online where he was explaining the half-life of atoms to somebody on Reddit.
Wow.
I do my research.
Yeah.
And so this is a guy who knows some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Tell us about your education, speaking of. How did you get to know stuff?
I went to Midlands Tech.
Okay.
And I only attended for a year and a half, and I ended up stopping because just the college format doesn't work well with me. I'm ADHD, and I learn at my own pace, and I stopped going to my algebra classes because I got interested in trying to publish some geometric postulates that I had come up with. To give you an idea of, I wasn't really focused on what I was supposed to be. My priorities were all messed up. But after I got out of college...
I need to know these geometric postulates. You got to understand, I have a degree in mathematics. That was something I majored in.
Yeah.
So what are you trying to prove? A triangle is really a square if you squint hard enough?
No. You know the geometric postulate that every line is consistent of a minimum of 2 points, and for every 2 points, there's a minimum of at least one line between them, etc.
I know that.
Then there's 2 linear points and 1 non-collinear point, or 3 non-collinear points will make a plane.
We'll make a plane.
My postulate that I was trying to get published, and I never finished this project, but It was that 3 non-collinear points and 1 non-coplanar point will make an object with volume.
Okay.
Contain volume within them. And so I was...
Doesn't sound very controversial. Sounds straightforward.
Seems pretty straightforward to me. But it's the matter of figuring out the proof and then going through the process of publishing it was one that I
and if you
didn't
had 5
decipher.
points, you then have formed a political party. So that works out great. Well, that's interesting. You said you're into movies, but I want to share this with you, Jamil. When I first took a look at Kyle, he reminded me of a very famous movie actor.
I think I know who you're going to say.
Yeah, let's look at the screen here.
There he is.
Do you recognize Daniel Radcliffe on the right, Mr. Harry Potter? And then there's Kyle Freeman on the left. Could they not be brothers?
They could
if
be.
not twins.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I have signed autographs as Harry Potter because it was easier to just give the autograph than it was to explain that I'm not Daniel Radcliffe.
Right.
Fortunately, we've strayed away from each other a little bit over the years.
Well, I'm sure in looks and in wealth.
Oh, yeah.
We're all far apart from Daniel Radcliffe. And I see you have a young child as well.
Yes.
That's awesome. How old?
I have 3 kids. I have
3? Oh, I thought you just had the one.
I have 2 with my wife.
Okay.
And I have one named Luke who lives in Florida.
Oh, wow.
And he's 17.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And he's awesome. He and I play video games together and stuff. And he's going to be joining us on our next Disney trip.
Okay. So the last question I have to ask you, your online persona, you go by the name K2 Knockout.
That is correct.
All right. Now, I did some researching on K2 Knockout, and it has to do with a type of genetically modified mouse. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's what came up. You'll find 1 million biochemical articles about K2 Knockout mice.
Neat.
Yeah. So I assumed you were biochemistry. So explain to me what you got for K2 Knockout.
So it's relatively simple. It's not a very interesting story. My initials used to be KO for Kyle O'Donnell. That's where Knockout came from. And I was in a Counter-Strike clan that was called K2. I believe it stood for Crazed Killers or something. We did Gears of War and a bunch of different games. We just played on Xbox Live and PC.
You're right. I'm sorry I asked.
Yeah, it's not interesting at all.
I was hoping for something that was more genetically modifiable there, but oh well, can't have everything.
Now that I know, that'll be the new origin.
So I first got to meet you when you showed up out of the blue at one of our Greenwood County Democratic Party breakfast meetings back in February. And you came in and says, "Hey, my name's Kyle. I'm running for U.S. Senate. Can I say hi to people?" And sure, we made a couple minutes free for you.
My intention in showing up was just to listen to people and to understand the vibes of how everybody's feeling and to just talk with people. I wasn't there for the purposes of like getting my name out or anything. That was like a learning exercise for me to try to learn more about the different counties that I hadn't visited before.
That was exciting. So we're glad you were there. I thought it was interesting, though, and actually I'm going to play a little clip from your visit with us. I'm going to play this now and then ask you a question about it. But I thought the way you introduced yourself to us was rather unique and hadn't heard any other candidate use this approach before. Let's give this a watch.
It's kind of serendipitous that you played the video about Jimmy Carter today, and specifically that he didn't tell a lie. My father was a pathological liar, which had its issues and its difficulties, but it allows me to see straight through people like Donald Trump. His weird narcissisms and all of that, I recognize it. And after he passed, and he was no longer there to defend those lies, I made a decision that I wasn't going to be like that, and that I was going to be as honest and truthful as I possibly can, and my life has been improving ever since. And so I want to be a politician that doesn't lie, that tells the truth regardless of the circumstances.
Well, that's certainly a welcome attribute that we want out of a politician, that for sure, or out of a representative. Was that a planned speech, or was that just off the cuff because you didn't expect to speak that day?
That was off the cuff.
No kidding.
Yes.
Well, you carry yourself well for somebody who didn't have a prepped speech. You couldn't tell.
I appreciate that. I've made a pledge not to lie during my entire political career, and it's been working out so far. I think that in order for our country to be able to move forward, we need more trust in our government. The whole reason that Donald Trump got into power in the first place is because the political system's as broken as it is. And one of the reasons that it's broken is because people who are in power are more interested in maintaining that power than they are in actually representing the people.
That was one of my questions, Kyle. We so frequently hear things from candidates, and Bill and I were candidates, and you hear that we are truth, things like truth matters. We hear the importance of honesty. And what I've come to realize is that I now characterize those as subjective descriptors, right? That what you as an individual see as truth may differ for what someone else sees. And so when we go to talk about Donald Trump, he pushed, and those that supported him pushed a message that they believe to be true. So when it comes down to you and your role as a candidate, how do you push actual truth and show actual honesty versus perceived honesty? Because I think Donald Trump's followers believe that he's being honest and he has their best interest at heart. But I think that's subjective because that's not what we see.
That is an excellent question, and I will do my best to avoid getting into like Heidegger and Nietzsche and the sort of deep philosophical discussions about truth. But I think that if you can have something that's an actual fact, that's a measure that you can measure, right? That's not subjective, then you should be able to present it as though it's not subjective. And if you have something that's an opinion, or if you're ever operating on vibes, you should have a disclaimer there that says that. The thing that Donald Trump, the reason why you'll hear everybody say he tells it like it is, despite the fact that he lies all the time, is because he's emotionally honest. He's honest in a way of he's not scripted, and he's not going through that process where everything that he says has been run through a focus group to make sure that they have the exact wording just right, and it's this meticulously quantifiable political message. He just says whatever's on his mind, which is essentially what I'm doing, but with the objective of doing what's best for America and not what's best for myself.
So let's come back to your campaign there, Kyle. Let's take us back to the first day you thought about running for office, specifically United States Senate, because that's quite a leap for a first-time candidate.
It is.
Where was that thought process? When did it form? How did you get there?
So it was towards the beginning of the 2024 campaign, like getting into full swing. And I was sort of diagnosing the issues with our political system and some of the problems that I'm noticing. And I watch congressional hearings, and I watch the Senate take testimony and things.
See, I'm not the only one, Jamil, that likes watching these things.
You're not.
Oh.
And it's so embarrassing to watch these guys have circles run around them by tech bros and billionaires and CEOs that just know that they don't understand how Facebook works, and they ask these embarrassing questions. And they're not making any meaningful sort of movement on climate change. They're out of touch. That's to sum it up. They're out of touch. And I was sort of diagnosing the issues that we have with the political system and why people are on the fence about Biden. And this was back in like February. And I said, what we need somebody that's young, somebody that doesn't have a priority of a political career, that just wants to go in and fix problems, that wants to spend the political capital that they have in order to improve people's lives.
And you feel like you've got political capital to spend?
That's what the campaign's doing. It's earning that stuff. Just like we need somebody that's interested in science and actually understands these things. And I realized that I was describing myself, and I look around and I see a bunch of people with their arms crossed basically saying the same thing. And I realized somebody just has to do it. Like if you don't, then you're going to get the same exact sort of candidates that you have been.
But what you're saying could apply to any office at any level, from city council and dog catcher to president of the United States.
That's true.
All right. So walk me through the process that said, you know what, I'm going to go after, how many U.S. senators are there in this country, Jamil?
100.
100, right? So you're going to go after 1 out of 100 spots in a country of millions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What was that thought process? I'm going to go after there instead of U.S. Congress or county council or state house rep or state senate, things like that.
Well, there's a lot of reasons that go into that. One is that I understand the government, or the federal government, and how Congress works and its process, and specifically the Senate, its subcommittees, more than I do the more local stuff. And so I felt like my particular skill set and my understanding, and I've been working in logistics for the last 13 years. So
What does that mean? Because I've worked in logistics as well for 20 years.
Okay.
What does that mean for you? It can mean different to a lot of different people.
It's very broad.
So my title is inventory control. You understand how frightfully boring this can be, like going down this path. But to put it in generalized terms, my job is to solve problems. Like, I'm there and I have busy work. That's my general day to day. But when something hits the fan, I'm the guy that has to step up and make sure that the building doesn't catch on fire.
Okay.
It's a matter of, you have this big complex system with all these things that are intertwining, and you have to figure out what changes you can make to that system to improve efficiency, or make sure that there's no flaws, make sure that there's nothing slips through the cracks and all of that stuff. And that's the kind of thing that the federal government needs. And I felt like I could bring that skill set to the federal government in a way that would be more impactful than it would if I brought that to the local scene. And not to say that the local scene doesn't need support, but an additional part of that is, with where I live, every single representative is a Democrat. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to, if I want to make real significant change.
What are you going to do? Challenge Heather Bauer for a state house rep, right?
Right.
So,
but there is one other aspect that I don't bring up very often, which is, because it's sort of alarmist and a little bit fear-mongery, but that's not the intention. The truth of the matter is, there is a very real possibility that there won't be a 2026 election. So we're already out of time. If we want to unseat a Republican in the Senate for South Carolina, we have to act now, because there might not be another opportunity.
What do you feel? Because in order for you to get out of the primary, you have to have a connection to local. Yeah. Right. So what do you feel, or how do you feel your approach will be to make sure that you are well versed in the local necessities and local politics, so that you'll be able to hold your own when it comes down to that primary that I'm sure you'll end up facing?
Well, that was the whole reason that I came to Greenwood in the first place. It was to go around. My plan is to visit every county, and not just to give a speech and let everybody know what I'm doing, but to specifically listen to the issues that people are facing and the problems that they're going through, and the kinds of just basically get a better understanding of how people are feeling. Okay. Like in Spartanburg, I knew that there's Volvo and BMW and all that, and that it's a large employer, but I didn't realize until I went there just how big of an impact people feel that it has. I mean, it's gotten to a point where it's a cultural impact for a lot of the people that are over there, and it's not just a financial one. And a lot of people are feeling very hurt by Lindsey Graham supporting these tariffs when it's hurting those businesses. Like, he's directly supporting something that's hurting the people of Spartanburg, and they're taking that very personally. So I don't think our government should be a group of elites that look down on the rest of us and tell us what we're going to do. It should be, if it's a representative democracy, you have to understand what people are thinking and how they're feeling and what they want the future to look like, in order to appropriately bring those ideas and thoughts and feelings to Washington, D.C.
So you seem very in tune to politics. I can hear a very intelligent thought process there. I just look at kind of the history of the U.S. Senate races in South Carolina since Jamie Harrison ran in 2020. Jamil, guess how much money Jamie Harrison raised in total as part of his campaign for U.S. Senate?
I don't know. How many? Couple million. Like 130. Okay.
$130 million.
Good
And
job,
he outraised Lindsey Graham, who raised $109 million.
Yeah. What was that difference in the vote?
And he lost 7,000? By 10%.
Oh.
That wasn't just a couple of thousand votes.
Yeah.
That was a lot of votes.
Yeah.
He lost by 10% to Lindsey Graham. And then 2 years later, Representative Crystal Matthews ran against Tim Scott. Senator Scott raised $51.7 million. Guess how much Crystal Matthews raised?
I'm going to go on the low. If she got $1 million, I don't even know. I don't know.
Not even. She did not even $250,000. She raised $134,000.
Yeah.
So you compare $130 million, $130,000, and she lost by 25%.
She did.
So you can't say that a certain number of dollars is equivalent to some votes.
I'm glad you made that point.
They were both kind of wide margins. Now, I think Crystal had some other things she was battling with at the time, but. Kyle, when you look at that, you think you are able to break that cycle of not needing to raise $130 million in order to beat an established Lindsey Graham?
I do. And don't get me wrong, I would love to raise $130 million.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. But I think one of the biggest issues that we have as a party in general is not acknowledging and leaning into the idea that this is a very emotional party. That we like to pride ourselves on being logical and factual and data-driven, but the Democrats are emotional. We're empathetic. And yet, as a political strategy, we spend so long trying to quantify a message by running it through focus groups and by ironing out all of the kinks and softening the edges. And I actually have an example of that happening within my own campaign, because we're on social media now. We're on Facebook, Blue Sky, Twitter, all of it. It's all Kyle4SC. I will come up with an idea for a post, and I'll send it over to my social media team. They'll look at it, and sometimes they'll suggest edits, and then they'll post it on everything. So I had this post. I sent it to him. It says, in 2020, the stock market crashed because of a worldwide pandemic crippled our economy. Today, the stock market crashed because of Trump. No outside influence forcing tough decisions. Just an idiot that thinks he knows more than experts. Now, you can argue if that's, you shouldn't call him an idiot, you should call his ideas an idiot. Like, we can have that kind of conversation for hours about what's appropriate. But this is what they came back with. In 2020, the global stock market experienced a significant downturn due to the economic challenges brought about by the worldwide pandemic. Today, we are witnessing another sharp decline in the stock market, a result of decisions influenced by President Trump's policies. Unlike the external forces of the pandemic, this downturn stems from the domestic leadership choices that have been at odds with expert guidance. It's terrible. I zoned out, and I was reading it.
Are you here publicly complaining about your social media team? Are you about to fire them?
No, this particular person's buddy of mine named Matt, and he knows that I give him crap for this particular one.
And it's good to have that dialogue.
It's
so
good.
This is the way that Kyle...
Because he's not wrong.
Yeah, would voice that opinion. And then this is the way that the person would. So you've got to bounce those off. But you have to also ask who is the targeted audience for that particular...
Right.
Your target audience might have been different from Matt's.
And that's true. But when you take an emotional message and you try to make it sound like a scientific paper in order to sound more professional, you've completely killed any soul that it would have had, and you're speaking to an emotional audience. And I think that's one of the reasons that Trump resonates, is because he doesn't do that. And so Jamie Harrison raises $130 million, and we can argue about the minutiae and the details of his campaign strategy and all of that. No disrespect to Mr. Harrison, but when he comes out with this sanitized, bland message that sounds like that, I don't think voters were voting against Jamie Harrison. I think they were voting against the same thing they had voted every election prior to that. Because he doesn't stand out as being somebody significant or different or as a change. He sounds exactly like a politician, like every other politician has before him.
That takes me back to my comment when I was saying we always hear honesty and integrity. So how do you differentiate yourself? So you're saying exactly the thought process for everyone. All voters are saying, well, this guy's going to get up there and he's going to say the same thing. He's going to do the same thing. What's different about this candidate?
I would say that what's different about me is that I'm not afraid to say I don't know. If I don't know the answer to a question, I'm going to be honest about that. And I think pretending like you have all of the answers feels like a good strategy, because you can say, like, oh, of course, because look at how competent I am. I know everything.
Yeah.
But the truth is nobody knows everything. And you have to be honest with the fact that you're going to need help. You're going to need support from other people.
I think at the same time, though, there's an expectation that I want my senator to know some that's complicated.
Yeah.
Like, I want my senator to know where countries are in the planet and who's the leader of what. You know, I look for a level of competency.
For sure. And there's obviously, if you're completely clueless about every topic, then there's some red flags going. But you don't want somebody that is going to not know and then find a BS answer that helps them get past the fact that they don't know.
Hey, Jamil and I have sat in enough of these candidate speeches where a question's asked and they don't know, and you know they don't know, and everybody knows they don't know, and they're still going to give a 5-minute answer. Yeah. There's nothing worse.
Oh, it's the pivoting.
So, Kyle, I'm going to ask you a tough question here.
Okay.
This will put the truth-telling to a test.
Go for it.
Another piece of information that's public record is your voting history. So while we can't see who you voted for, that part's private, you can see what elections you've participated in. And whenever I talk to a candidate that I don't know, I look at the voting record and I see that you've participated in the general elections for the past couple of cycles, but you don't participate in the primaries. Is there a reason you don't get interested in those June elections to pick the local? Like, if you're going to represent the Democratic Party, one of the things I would look for is how invested are you or involved are you in the local Democratic Party? And the primaries is one indicator. It's not the only indicator, but it's one.
So there's a couple reasons for that. And one of them is I feel oftentimes that I'm not up to date on who the candidates are, and I don't want to vote badly. You know, I want to have an informed vote. And usually when it comes to the primaries, because they don't get as much media coverage and stuff, they're not on my radar because I'm paying attention to other things. In the past, before I got more politically involved, it would be more like movies and video games and stuff. And then by the time that the primary came around, it's like, oh, I don't know who any of these people are. I don't want to just go vote badly, so I won't. And before Obama, I was voting Republican all the time. The last Republican that I voted for was John McCain, who I still believe was an incredible American. I voted for Obama afterwards. Part of it was a protest vote for Mitt Romney, and the other part was Obama had been doing a great job, I had to admit.
So let's talk about why you voted in the Republican presidential primary in 2024, the one that featured Nikki Haley versus Donald Trump. You didn't go into the Democratic primary, but you're on record as having voted in the Republican presidential primary.
I don't think I voted in that one. I mean, am I still registered as a Republican?
There's no registering of parties in South Carolina. It's just which primary you showed up to. So you don't remember pulling a lever for Trump or Nikki Haley in January of 2024, or was it February for the Republican one?
February.
Yeah. January was the Democratic one.
It's possible. I don't remember this, but it is possible that we went there. My wife and I may have both gone to vote specifically not for Trump in hopes that he would lose the party.
There's plenty of people I know who have done that.
A lot of people play chess, not checkers, so you will.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
It beat our ass, that's what happened.
If that's the case, I legitimately do not remember doing that.
Yeah. You mentioned, and I'm glad that you said McCain, and I asked the question about who do you consider, like, who was a role model. And on Ballotpedia, I noticed you referenced John McCain and Al Franken as senators who you would model yourself after. So, I mean, I admire John McCain too. There's some strong.
Oh, I admire Al Franken.
Yeah.
Boy,
when I read that, and he said Bernie Sanders, and when I read that, I thought, okay, you picked three strong senators. They have, and the characteristics that he's chosen to align with why is very telling.
I'll share with you another thing I'm impressed about with your campaign so far. Went to the FEC site where we can see your filings quarter to date. And in fact, I was surprised that you had filings, because in order to file, you have to have either spent or received in donations $5,000. That's the limit. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, he's kind of early in the campaign. Maybe he hasn't raised it yet. But no, you filed, and your last filing had $32,000 in receipts. But when you drill down, most of it's from yourself.
Yes.
Which I am very impressed by, because that means you are investing in yourself. I remember when I ran, my first campaign donations was $1,000 to me. Right? It's like, I want to put my skin in the game and continue to put my own skin in the game. That tells you about yourself, that you're certainly not in this to make money.
Absolutely.
That's not what that says.
Certainly not. Yeah. I've taken out like $10,000 loans more than once in order to keep things going and build momentum and pay staff and stuff like that. It's because this matters. And so there's a phrase that was bouncing around in my head. It was one of the reasons I couldn't talk myself out of running for Senate, which was a 6-month process of trying to talk myself out. I had the idea in February, and it wasn't until around October, maybe September, that I finally gave in and said, I just have to do this.
Is your friend Matt going to ask for his campaign contribution back after you slammed his social media rewrite?
He can try. But and his was an in-kind contribution. He didn't give with cash. He gave with work. And
that's a very kind contribution.
It's very kind.
There comes a time in your life where you have to choose between doing what's right and doing what's easy. And running for Senate is hard, but it's the right thing to do. So that's why I'm standing up and I'm doing this, and I'm
You never considered running for Pope? I heard that position's opened up too.
So, as somebody who has, let's call them critiques of the Catholic Church. I have some notes on how they could operate better.
We'll save that for the next time we have you down.
I think we should.
We're going to wrap things up. What I want to do is allow you a few minutes to talk about your personal issues that you're campaigning on, platform-wise. What is it you want the listeners to take away from that you want to associate with the name Kyle Freeman for U.S. Senate?
Well, I'm for Medicare for all. I want to increase workers' rights. I want to bolster the ability to unionize. I want a future where wealth income inequality isn't so ridiculously disparaged, where these billionaires that are essentially exploiting a glitch in capitalism can be brought down to where they should be, to where a reasonable place is. We need to fix our healthcare system because this is America. This is one of the greatest countries in the world, if not the greatest. And I truly do believe that. But because there's a church in Normandy, France. I've been to Normandy, and it's a beautiful place. But there's a church that received bombing in World War II, and it blew out all of the stained glass windows. And those stained glass windows were replaced with images of our paratroopers in the 101st Airborne and the 82nd Airborne, right next to their religious iconography. Like, this is an incredible country that has done incredible things in history. And where we are right now is an embarrassment, where we're not taking care of our veterans. We're allowing people to have to die from curable diseases because they just can't afford to go to the doctor. We're allowing systemic racism to permeate, and we're allowing billionaires to skirt paying income taxes by just, in lieu of a salary, they take stocks. And somebody needs to go and fight this. And step one is undoing the legalized bribery of Citizens United so that people can vote their conscience again. Step two is to work as hard as you possibly can to fix all of these things, because I want future generations to look into a history book and not be able to understand the kind of America that we've had to live through for the past 20 years.
Sure. Yeah. What's your website that people can find you at?
It's kyleforsc.com.
Wonderful. And I've seen that site. You have links to a whole bunch of social medias from there for people to find you on their favorite platform. Kyle, we thank you for coming down and spending time with us today.
Thank you for having
me. An enjoyable conversation.
And I brought some swag for you guys, so thank you for having me.
We like swag.
We like swag. Best swag we got was tequila. Remember that?
Yeah, that was a good one. We'll bring that one back.
That was almost a year ago today, as a matter of fact. Remember, it was Cinco de Mayo.
It was.
Yeah?
We should have invited her back.
Oh, we need to.
Anniversary tequila.
I could use it.
Yeah.
I could use it.
I'm more of a whiskey guy, a whiskey and vodka guy.
We are delighted and absolutely honored to have candidate for South Carolina State Superintendent of Education, Ms. Sylvia Wright.
Woo-hoo.
Welcome to Black, White, and Blue in the South.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here.
And that's all we have time for today. We appreciate Sylvia for stopping by.
No, we got questions.
We do. Now, I do need to preface this in that we are recording from somewhere slightly different than we normally record from today. We are recording just after having wrapped up the May breakfast meeting of the Greenwood County Democratic Party.
Yeah.
A breakfast meeting that you actually ran, Jamil.
I did.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're a natural at this.
I don't know.
So we're actually recording in a big gymnasium right now, trying to get that intimate feel. But the reason we're recording here is because our guest spoke at our breakfast meeting.
Yes.
And boy, what a fantastic
Did an
speech you
amazing
gave.
job.
Thank you.
How do you feel that went?
I think it went great, especially after talking to people who were here listening. And it was a bunch of encouragement that I received, and I have a lot of people who are ready to volunteer. So
Yeah.
it went
No, I have
great.
to say, you have been one of the busiest candidates I've ever seen. You have been all over the state already and have been so since September of 2024.
Yeah.
Now, this election's not until November of 2026.
Yes.
And you're already out there stumping away.
Yes, sir.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
I also have to comment. We've been doing these breakfast meetings, at least with me as the chair. I'm no longer the chair, by the way.
Don't do that.
But since I was chair in 2020, you have beaten the record for the most questions asked by the audience. You blew it away. I mean, it wasn't even a close second. Why is it you think people are so interested in your campaign?
I believe people are ready for a change, and they hear that in my message, and they know I'm sincere, and that I will do the work to actually transform public education. Because for me, it's not about a title or a position. I'm invested in transforming public education. And I think people sense that and they feel that. They know I'm authentic. And so they want to find out more. Mm-hmm. So,
are you saying there is a dissatisfaction with the current superintendent of education in South Carolina? Tell me that's not the case.
Yes. Sorry, you weren't asking me, but
she's had this whole time to make a change. And the only thing that she's brought to the table is book bans, pushing private school vouchers, just being exclusive instead of including, trying to figure out ways to help improve public education in our state. She hasn't done that. She's made no effort. I've been to State Department meetings. I've been to meetings at the State House, and she's not advocating for public education in any setting. So the majority of the people have kids in public education, and they want a viable, successful public education for their children. And so I'm that candidate for that, and people see that difference.
You mentioned going to the State Department meeting, so I went to one, and at that meeting, it was when they were considering not offering AP, African American history as an AP course, AP credit. And there were students that came from HBCUs that said the AP credit was so important to them. And I remember one young lady going to the microphone and she said, "Ms. Weaver, you said that teaching Black history," and I may be paraphrasing, I'm not quoting her, "was indoctrinating us." And I will never forget Weaver sitting straight up in her chair, looking directly at that young lady and said, "Yes, it is." What do you feel about the whole concept of indoctrinating? And American history is fine to get AP credit in, but not African American history.
Before you answer, did you know that they allow still AP Gulf management?
Isn't that some crap?
But felt that AP African American history would not get supported or funded by the state.
That's crazy. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm a full supporter of African American history, and that's one of the things that I want to make sure is brought back into the lineup once I become state superintendent of education. But there was another question you had asked me.
It was about indoctrination.
Indoctrination, thank you. So one thing that the current superintendent campaigned on was that she would be against indoctrinating our children. But yet she is promoting Prager University. She went behind the state board's back to privately make this deal with PragerU. And if we talk about indoctrination, all you have to do is watch some of those videos to see that the one thing that she said she wouldn't do, she's doing with PragerU.
All right, so I'm going to pause for a second because that actually is one of the clips that I had prepped. Let's take a listen. This is Ellen Weaver on a promotional, I would call this advertisement for Prager University. So we'll listen to the first bit of it and get us all nice and mad.
Okay, good.
I'm so excited to be here in South Carolina for PragerU's new partnership with you. 69% of 8th graders in the United States of America cannot pass a basic literacy test.
There are 4 parts of our brain that have to be connected by explicit instruction in order to become good readers, and that doesn't happen by chance.
I bet you use the word freedom every single day of your life.
Yes, we have an incredible country, an incredible state.
This is an opportunity to just tell everybody you're not forced to use this content, but you should really check it out because I think you're really going to enjoy it.
This is a great step forward for our state, and I'm really grateful for your partnership.
And this goes on for 20 more minutes if you're interested. Tell us a little bit about this partnership, Jamil. What do you know?
Oh, let me do it the right way because I was going to say the partnership is trash. But if you, and you can keep that part, but if you were to go and watch some of the PragerU videos, and they say that you have a choice not to use those resources can be embedded in any LMS learning management system that the teachers use so that the students can have access to it. And then there is, if you watch the videos, indoctrination is the videos.
Yep.
There is a one-sided way of thought to push religion and the beliefs that one group was not the true victim. And there's definitely not a way that we want to continue to help our children grow. It's the worst idea ever. I'm going to say that I think PragerU is an example of trying to take something that was horrific and paint it into a beautiful picture.
Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? I don't see the problem.
And for her, the current state superintendent, to feel like that is a good way to do it, she is supporting the ideology of what happened might have been wrong, but we're going to cover it up and paint it this way because we think this is the best way to go. And it's more like I'm going to save as many as my people in my image as I can, even though I know that what occurred was trash.
Right.
Well, let's back away from talking about an opponent and get to know you a little bit more, Sylvia, because we also want to be able to be for you as opposed to just opposed to somebody else,
Yes.
right? So give us a little background on you for the person who has no idea who Sylvia Wright is. Where did you come from to come out to Greenwood today?
Well, I drove out from Somerville, South Carolina.
How far away is Somerville?
I'm like almost 3 hours away.
Okay.
So you've been up since, what, 4 a.m.?
Wow.
Well, I actually came up last night.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I came up. I
Sweet.
stayed in the Hampton Inn here in Greenwood.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean,
It wasn't bad.
It's
It
what we
wasn't.
got.
It wasn't bad.
Bill.
We would have found you a nice house to stay at, somebody's house if we had known.
It wasn't bad.
Okay, all right. We don't want to besmirch Hampton Inn. Lovely people, I'm sure.
Oh, my gosh.
Jamil, you're getting sued for that.
No, you are. What are they going to get from us?
Yeah, right?
But originally, I'm from North Charleston, South Carolina, born and raised. My dad was in the Air Force. I went to South Carolina public schools, public education. I from elementary to high school, graduated. Even went to universities here in South Carolina. So I would say public education helped shape me into the person that I am today. I've been in education for over 20 years. I was also a military wife. So I've traveled every 3 to 4 years. I've been in different states. I've seen how different school districts operate in different states. And that's part of my thinking and how I want to reshape and transform public education in South Carolina. Because I've seen how some things work in one state that might be applicable to our state. But again, it wouldn't just be me doing all the work. I want to work together with a team of not just educators, but a team of specialists, team of leaders. It's going to take a team effort to really transform public education. So I want all voices at the table.
All right. So aside from being a teacher and having been a public education student, okay, great. Your bio has you with experience in 19 different school systems throughout the country. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Talk about this. Where have you been? What are some of the furthest places away you've been? Where are some of the advanced post-secondary degrees you've gotten? Let's talk about that part. Because, listen, what I heard today at this breakfast meeting
Blew your mind.
had me jumping up and down. Because if there's anything I want out of a candidate, is somebody who's freaking qualified.
Yep.
So please, I know you don't like to brag on yourself,
But do so.
but you got to. If you want to win people over, this is what a lot of us are looking
Do
for.
so, yeah.
Well, I have my first master's I received after.
Listen to
First master's.
first of like a dozen. Go on.
I received after going back to school because I noticed there were different needs in my classroom. So that's what motivated me to go back to school at Columbia College. And I went through the Divergent Learning Program, and that program taught me strategies to differentiate learning in my class. Then fast forward, we were in Texas. I went to Texas Tech University, received my Master's of Arts in History because I knew I wanted to be a college professor. And so this actually gave me the opportunity to be a college professor. I was an adjunct professor, a history professor at Charleston Southern University for 3 years. Fast forward, we moved back to South Carolina and I started moving up in school leadership. And I noticed that there was a leadership problem. So again, me wanting to, do the work, do what's best for kids, I received a master's of education and educational leadership from the Citadel. I continued at the Citadel, received my specialist, which prepared me to be a superintendent.
Well, I'm going to pause for a second. Were you a classmate of Nancy Mace by chance? Were you a part of the same class there?
Listen,
guys pals?
What we will not do is bring her name up during this information session.
I'm just kidding. I'm asking the people's questions. I can hear our listeners wanting to know.
That just tainted the whole thing. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Go ahead.
Yes, no Nancy Mace. But after receiving my specialist and being prepared for a superintendency, I continued on. I'm currently pursuing my Doctor of Education at the University of South Carolina in systems improvement and innovation because that's what I want to bring to our public school system here in South Carolina.
So let me just say, because I got excited. I've been watching her since she first started to campaign in 2024. I saw the name pop up and I just kind of been, and I love to do this behind the scenes, just looking to see exactly how this person is moving. This is an individual who worked in the field saw areas of opportunity, and instead of delegating someone else to fix those areas of opportunity, she inserted herself in there by taking the additional training to do that. Now, that's what I look for in a superintendent. So if you notice gaps, then what do you do to fix those gaps? It's not necessarily pointing it out for someone else. It's go get the advanced training that's necessary, that's not in a micro classroom, so that you can learn about how to fix the problems that we have.
So I have a personal question to ask. Don't you feel you might be awfully young to be running for a position like this? You're only in your early 30s. So how do you feel you've gained the experience to run for this type of office?
Oh, well, I'm actually 44.
Oh, get out of here.
You should have just taken the compliment.
Oh, yeah. I'm 44 and I have a grandson.
So get out of here.
Yes, he'll be 3 in November.
Wow.
Yeah, he's the apple of my eye. He's so full of energy. And I'm so very proud of him. He can say full sentences and
well, so can I. I don't see you,
sometimes,
giving me compliments.
Sometimes, Bill.
He can identify colors. He can count to 10. Like, I'm very proud of him. And I just want to make sure he goes to a school, no matter where my daughter lives in South Carolina, that he goes to a school that will elevate his level of learning.
And you have a son and daughter?
Yes, sir. My son is 25. He's in the Air Force, actually.
Oh, wow.
He's about to be a military instructor. I'm so proud of him. So he's about to move to Texas from Alabama. And my daughter's in the nursing program at Trident Tech in South Carolina, or Charleston.
Well, that's great. You made a decision early on you're going to take on the state superintendent pursuit. Was there a trigger moment? Was there a deciding moment? Or was this something you had your eye on for a long, long time?
Well, to be honest with you, this wasn't on my radar. I don't know if you're familiar with the AVID program, but when I was in Texas, I became an AVID teacher. And I saw how...
I'm sorry, I don't know what that program is.
Okay, so AVID is like a college and career program to help prepare students in leadership, helps them with their writing, critical thinking, collaborating with others. It helps them get organized, and it also helps with reading. So it's the whole deal, the whole package, and it's very impactful, and I've seen the impact for myself. So just seeing that, and let me back up. When I went to the AVID conference, when I first got into the program, it was like people were drinking Kool-Aid. I remember thinking that to myself. These people are so excited, and they've been drinking Kool-Aid, right? Because I knew nothing about it. But after teaching it, after seeing the impact, I was like, this is a legit feeling, because they are actually changing the trajectory of students. And so I wanted to be an AVID coordinator for a district. So that was my goal. But then after my grandson was born, I started looking up private school options for him, because in my mind I was like, if I want to get him into a good private school, I need to start researching now. But that's when I felt a conviction, a deep conviction. I'll never forget it. I sat back in my office chair and I heard, what about the kids who are left in the system? And I was like, okay, Lord, well, what would you have me to do? And that's when this position popped in my mind. And I was like, okay, I started doing my research of the position. I talked to my friends, family. And so since 2023, since December 2023, I've been doing what I need to do to make sure I get this position, to make sure that every student in South Carolina gets that free, high-quality public education that they deserve.
Now, we know who the current superintendent is, and although she hasn't announced, it's likely she's going to run again. I mean, she's got the money, the backing, and so on. Do you see any other competition coming along on the Democratic side that you might have a primary in June of next year? Have you heard any? You don't have to give any names,
right?
But have you heard any inklings of others who might be throwing their names in?
I've heard an inkling of someone from the upstate, but nothing
was that
for
name
sure.
Jamil Brooks?
It should not be, because that's not happening.
Okay, I just want to make sure we weren't...
Let's put that to bed in a hurry. That's a no.
I was just hoping to see you two fight it out. This would have made for great ratings.
No.
Jamil's about to make her announcement and then challenge you to a debate right now.
She is not. She is not. But Jamil will support you.
Thank you.
Okay. Have you had, and I know it's still very early on, and you have actually, announced running earlier than any candidate I've ever seen. Have you had an opportunity to build a campaign team yet, a campaign manager, the whole organization that kind of goes, or are you still kind of doing it solo and seeking out those teammates as you go?
I actually have a campaign manager now, a campaign team. Keisha Carter is helping me run my campaign. She's done several jobs in South Carolina, worked with several politicians here in the state. So one of the things that I'm very appreciative of now, having a campaign team, is I don't have to do everything by myself. Since December of 23, like I was saying, I was the one calling people, setting things up. I had people help me with my website. I can't say I did that by myself. But just trying to find things, trying to get my name out there, trying to raise funds on my own. It was a struggle. So having a team really helps. It makes it so much easier, and I'm very appreciative of it.
Now, Lisa Ellis was the last Democrat to run for state superintendent. She was the founder of SC for Ed and a longtime teacher herself, and she ran a very strong campaign and had the strongest voting turnout of any statewide candidate. So she performed better than Joe Cunningham did for governor or Crystal Matthews did for U.S. Senate. Have you followed her campaign? Did you watch it, and did you learn anything from that campaign that you think you're going to do things a little differently or maybe even do better? How have you learned from that?
Yes, sir. So I actually called Lisa Ellis and had a conversation with her. I also called Kathy Maness and had a conversation with her.
Let's talk about who Kathy Maness is. Who's that?
Kathy Maness was the Republican opponent against Ellen Weaver. And Kathy Maness actually had more qualifications, the credentials, and she was an educator.
I saw Ellen Weaver attack her Republican opponent during that primary, calling her woke, calling her, indoctrinating. You would think she was running against the Democrat, and she ran such a vicious campaign. There is nothing more vicious than watching Republicans take on Republicans.
True.
Because once they win that primary, they practically ignore their Democratic opponent from that point forward.
They do.
And one of the key things, my takeaways, was getting out early. And so that's why I'm getting my name out there early. I'm traveling all over the state, all to different counties. So to inform people about who I am, my positions, what I stand for, that way there's no question. So people can't come and say, they just hear my name and then they don't know anything about me. So they easily hear what the opponent is saying about me. Now people will know me. They've met me face to face. So they won't fall for the lie because they've met me.
Yeah.
I'll have to say, I was a little disappointed that it's taken you so long to get to Greenwood. I reached out to you in November trying to get you to come out here, and I was a little jealous watching McCormick get you, watching every other county in the state get you, but we're glad that you made it today. Now, you have to admit, this is one of the largest crowds you've been in front of at any of these meetings, right? This was I counted 70 people.
Did you count 70?
Counted 70 in attendance today.
Wow.
So you counted 70 people, but I will tell you that, let's just say 3 of the people that I were talking to said that as Wright was speaking, they were going on to Facebook and sharing her profile with other people.
Nice.
So 70 people face to face, but the amount of people that was moving in your impact, and you still standing in one spot.
Yeah,
Nice.
that last lady, Pam Morton, got up and spoke, and she made a great point about how it's incumbent upon everybody in that room to now go and pass that message.
Yeah.
What were you complaining about afterwards?
Because they didn't do that for our campaign.
See, both Jamil and I, as you're aware, we both ran for office last year.
And, one of the biggest things that we would hear is that, well, we didn't see you, or you saw us and you didn't acknowledge us. And it's like, oh, my God, we can't be everywhere at one time. And that doesn't change that we're still passionate about fighting for the people.
Right.
But to have her say that and to stand up and say it so clear, I was like, put that crap on a shirt right now.
Right.
Because I would wear that and point at that all day.
You had mentioned that you had 3 key actions as part of your campaign and your platform. What were those 3 actions again?
So the first one, and these are actions that I would immediately implement in order to elevate or transform public education. The first one is meeting with the local superintendents as they talk to their teachers, other school leaders, district leaders, parents, families, communities, so we can find out what the actual needs are in these different communities and create a budget that will address the needs. Because right now, the budget is being created without talking to the people who are on the ground level. So that's one thing that I want to fix. I want to get the voices at the table who are doing the work and meet their needs. And in order to do that, I need to hear their voices. So budget would be the first one.
Okay.
Intentional budget. The second one would be creating a basic level of learning expectations throughout the whole state. So what that looks like is taking the indicators, breaking them up into skills. And that way teachers can create these individualized learning pathways for students. It's possible. 20 years ago, it might have been questionable. But with the technology that we have today, we can take those indicators, break them up into skills, Teachers can create individualized learning pathways. Students then can take ownership of their learning, and parents can also support their students because they'll know what skills they need to work on with their students. And then the third thing is accountability and transparency. And when people hear that, they want to think it's just the school. No, accountability and transparency isn't just about holding schools accountable. It's about holding families accountable and holding communities accountable, because it's going to take all of us working together to transform public education in South Carolina. We can no longer operate in silos and depend on one person to do something and we don't do our part. We all have to do our parts. I've been to 25 different counties right now, and I'm going to get to all 46, but I'm in communities currently. And after I'm elected, I will stay in communities. I will partner with superintendents, the local superintendents, create these town halls. That way we are in constant communication with the community, with families, and with our school and local leaders and our teachers.
Now, you brought up... I'm sorry, Jamil, go ahead.
No, I was going to switch gears, but you might want to take that
I was
point.
switching gears as well.
Oh, okay, so...
We'll switch to your gear.
Okay, so I'm heading over to House Bill 3196, which they label as the Educator Assistance Act.
Yes.
But the one point of it, so it's passed the House and the Senate, and so it's waiting on the governor's signature.
That is correct.
So are we in favor of that or no?
We are in favor of that.
Yes, definitely in favor of that. Yes.
Thank you for telling me how to think. I needed to make sure I was on the right side here.
So I'm going to tell you the part that I appreciate, and then I would like for you to speak to what you appreciate about that, the passing of that, or for the governor to sign, is the fact that what teachers encountered previously, you would get your contract, let's just say January, the contract comes out, the intent to return comes in your box. You have to sign by a certain date if you plan on returning to that particular school. That helps with them allocate for, utilization people where they go, right? March, and then I think they send another one out maybe May or something. Once you sign that contract, you are almost kind of locked in to come back to that school. But now at this time, other schools have had people sign contracts, so they know who's leaving. So there may be a seat that comes open for you at another institution. You go and you interview for it, but you can't, and you get it. You can't take that job because you've signed a contract for the other school. The problem was you had teachers who were trapped in contracts and could not take better opportunities that were better for them and their families because they had signed. And if they did, they had the chance of potentially losing their license or being penalized.
If you were paid like an NFL football player, I get the contract.
Yes. And I have no legal experience, but even I did not let that contract hold weight to me because I felt like with the state of South Carolina and the hole that they have with vacancies, somebody's going to pick me up as an educator. So I was willing to walk, whether I had the contract signed with my district or not. But it put teachers in such a bad position. And so with this bill, now you don't do that.
My biggest win was I have to renew every 5 years. I'd have to scurry and get
renew what?
My certificate, my teacher certificate.
Every 5 years.
Every 5 years.
Because you get dumb after 5 years and you have to prove you're still smart.
Yes. So with this bill, I don't have to renew every 5 years. I still have to get my professional development, which is what I do, but I don't have to try to renew. Like I just recently renewed. So I had to talk to the school district. They had to get all this stuff together, and it was just like a big hassle.
It's a tedious process.
Yes.
And it is so time consuming. And it seems like to me, renewal comes up right around the time where there's testing. It doesn't matter what kind of, if it's state testing or if it's exams or something, you got educators that are really trying to get their kids ready for a certain milestone, and dang it, it's your 5-year reevaluation. It's like,
well, Jamil, we only have a few minutes left, believe it or not. So we've got two more topics I want to bring up. And the big one is one, Jamil, that you punted on in our breakfast meeting today to make room for our guest speaker.
Okay.
And that was the school vouchers bill.
Yeah.
Can you give a quick update on what's happened there? And we'll get our guest's opinion on it.
Well, I think we're at the point now where they've passed, so we're waiting on the signatures of the governor. If you look at the trajectory of it, I believe that it is going to cost us more money the longer we go, and we're not established to keep that going. So what's going to happen is somebody's going to be left further behind.
So what's new since we last spoke with Heather Bauer, where it was still under debate in the House?
And it's since passed.
It's passed. The Senate's passed. They've come to an agreement. So now it's a consolidated bill, and it's going to get signed by the governor.
Correct.
Sylvia, what are you going to do about that when you're elected?
Well, that's actually a really good question because someone's posed that to me already. So what I want to do is roll it back. Well, first of all, let me back up. Hopefully, the state court will do their due diligence like last time and make sure this is marked as unconstitutional, which it is, because it goes against our state constitution. But if they don't, and, this moves forward, then once I'm state superintendent, we'll work with legislators to roll this back to where eventually there is no more public funds being shifted to private schools. Because I've actually looked up what's going to happen. You can look at Arizona, you can look at Texas, and there are other state examples of how this is going to create a deficit in our state.
Yep.
And it's not only going to take money away from public education, it's going to take money away from other agencies. In Arizona, there was a 3.25% budget cut to other state agencies, not just education. We're talking about our economy.
Yeah.
So basically, this push to send these public funds to private school, to disregard our state constitution, these safeguards to protect us that they're ignoring, it's going to be bad for our schools, it's going to be bad for our families, and bad for our economy.
And they call it school choice, but it's anything but, as we've covered a lot. I want to give a couple of minutes to one of the representatives we admire, Justin Bamberg.
Okay, yeah.
He got up and gave an impassionate speech, and I want us to listen to his words, just 3 minutes worth.
Okay.
So let's forget the fact that to try to get around a Supreme Court opinion that said, if you take the money and you give it right to the schools, that's unconstitutional because the South Carolina Constitution says you can't do it. We decide to launder the money through a third party and say, hey, we can't give it to them, but you do it for us, right? Let's forget that part. Is the state prepared, and this is what we have to think about when we talk about these programs, $1.455 billion. Now, why do I bring that up? Because I despise this bill. This bill will not help any of the kids who live in the part of the state that I not only represent, that I live in and that I grew up in. Bamberg County. Total population approximately 14,000 people. 83.6% of students living in poverty. Let's go to neighboring Orangeburg County. 85.6% of students in poverty. Let's go to Colleton County. 86.2% of students in poverty. Let's jump over to Dorchester 4. I wasn't a part of Dorchester delegation before. I'm proud to represent them now. Dorchester 4, 74.9% of students in poverty. Let's go to Allendale
That's a lot
County.
of poverty.
That's a lot.
93.1% of students in poverty. Let's go to Barnwell County. 84.9% of students in poverty. Let's jump to Hampton County. 84.6% of students in poverty. Jasper County, 79.5% of students in poverty. Williamsburg County, 93.7% of students in poverty. Clarendon County, 82.3% of students in poverty. Now, y'all make it make sense to me how if the state of South Carolina has $95 to $96 million to give to kids who can already afford to go, apparently, because I don't know what $7,500 is going to do to pay no private school tuition. But if we got that kind of money, if we've got money to apportion so 50,000 students can get $7,500 each to go to private schools to the tune of $375 million, what is this going to do for all of those kids living in poverty?
And that's it.
I keep saying it, and he's saying it too, and you're going to be tired of me saying this, but why in the world is South Carolina focusing on the 2% when they should be making sure that the 98% make it? Something's not right.
Now, you know who's in favor of these school voucher bills? Moms for Liberty. And I dug up a great letter to a newspaper, an opinion piece written by our guest that was published on Myrtle Beach Online. And the title of her opinion piece, and there will be a link to it in our show notes. The title is, "If you are a true mom for liberty, take this action for South Carolina public schools." In it, she says, this is my favorite line. She says, "The moms for liberty take credit for these disruptions like terrorists after a terror attack. They commit these actions under the guise of fighting for liberty. As a true mom for liberty, I believe in the freedom of choice."
Yay.
So,
well done.
That was a wonderful article. Do you remember writing that?
Yes.
Okay. Speaking of, do you remember writing that? Do you remember writing a book? Publishing a book called How I Survived the First 5 Years of Teaching, which is available on Amazon today, both in print and Kindle format.
Yes,
So
sir.
you just wasn't going to tell the listeners any of that.
No, she's keeping secrets
just
from us.
keeping secrets that need to be. Do you know how many first-year teachers struggle and need that? That is so cool.
Thank you.
Well, tell us about that book, because she basically left open a website from 100 years ago when she first wrote this book, and she hasn't touched it in a decade. Like it was Donald Trump era.
So Sylvia, meet Bill.
So I published that in 2012, I think it was. It's been a while.
The good years.
Yeah,
right? Remember those years?
But it was out of frustration that educators drop out within the first 5 years of teaching. So that's why I came up with that title about my first 5 years, all the things that I experienced that almost turned me away. I actually was ready to get out of public education. We were in D.C. at the time. We were stationed at Bolling Air Force Base. It's Joint Base Anacostia now, but I had applied for a government position, a federal job. And so I found out that I had to go through certain interview processes. I thought it was only one, like with education, because that's all I knew. So when I found out I'd have to go through more hurdles, I did not have the time. I was at that deadline where I had to sign my contract or I wouldn't have a job. So that's what kept me in it. I'll never forget crying in my car because I would be stuck in public education. But, I believe God has a purpose and a plan for all of us. And I believe it was my purpose to stay in education. It's part of his plan.
Here's a quote from her book.
Okay.
"I called the South Carolina Department of Education Teacher Certification Office, and the customer service person told me that it could take them up to 90 days to process my application."
Lord.
90 days! I could not wait 90 days. I needed a job. Like, this is written from the heart, and it's not a textbook. It is truly a memoir.
Wow.
And so I recommend it for everybody.
I remember that, actually, because that's when I first started teaching. I couldn't find a job anywhere.
Right. The
Everybody
teacher
wanted
shortage all over the place. You can't find a job.
They wanted a teacher who had experience. So nobody would give me that foot in the door.
And now they'll get you don't even have to have experience.
Right.
If you look like
now
you can call the roll.
Got a heartbeat.
Yeah,
come
we'll
teach.
hire you.
All right. Well, Sylvia, we thank you so much for spending
Thank
time with
you
us
so
today.
much, yes.
Thank
you
you.
can follow her campaign, volunteer, and most importantly, donate.
Yes.
A campaign, as we know, does not run on prayer alone. So you can visit her at Wright, and that's WRIGHT, Wright 2026SC.com. Of course, we'll have a link to that in our show notes as well. Thank you, Miss Sylvia.
Thank
We wish you
you.
the best. And
Thank you.
We're going to have you back again next year
Of
as the
course.
Yes.
campaign heats up. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Most definitely.
All right. Take
All
care.
right.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Black, White, and Blue in the South. We thank Kyle Freeman and Sylvia Wright for spending time with us this week, and we wish them the best in their campaigns. We hope you enjoyed what you heard today. Please take a quick minute and leave us a rating and a review of this show. We really want to know what you think. If you do, we'll Photoshop a picture of Donald Trump as the next pope holding a black, white, and blue poster with our beautiful logo on it.
I don't want our logo nowhere near that, man.
If you are a blue dot in a red sea, keep the faith, keep up the hard work. Change only happens over many years of work and dedication. I want to close out today with some words that struck a chord with me like no other. It's an absolutely perfect assessment of the state of the Democratic Party today, and I hope you agree with every word spoken by this wise woman just this past Saturday.
Understand that the message is just as diversified as the party. I'm going to expand that for y'all. Throughout this election, past election, we've heard people say, well, what's the message for the Democratic Party? We don't have a message. What is our message? We do have a message. It's just that our message varies. The Democratic Party is an example of a true melting pot. We have people from all different walks of life. That's what we do. And we ensure that they have access to human rights. That's what we do. So it's hard to have one succinct message when so many of us show up every day to fight a different cause. You came today and you believe in the way you believe and you vote the way you vote, and it might not be the same way that everybody else believes, but you fight the same fight. So the Democratic Party is a party for the people. We make the party. We make it what it is. So don't look for a universal message. Find the message that's near and dear to your heart. Speak to that message. And also be able to listen to the people that's sitting beside you and hear what they feel is near and dear to their heart. I don't believe there's one succinct message. You have the ability to process that however you are. But I need for you to remove that ideology from your thought process, because I believe that is hindering the progress of the party today.
I would have stood up and cheered.
That's
Jamil, I don't
deep.
know if you remember saying that.
That's kind of deep.
God, I got goosebumps when I heard you say that.
I kind of feel it now, but that's deep. I don't want them to take that from us. We are diversified, and so is our fight.
Gets me so mad when people say we don't have a message.
What is the message? What is the message?
What, do you need a bumper sticker? Is that how deep you want to go?
Listen, we so complex, you can't put it on one.
I bet you I surprised you with that lead-in.
You did. I went, what? What one?
When I heard you say that, I was like, I'm getting a clip of that. I'm going to hear that daily. That's going to be my ringtone.
Yeah.
It's going to be my ringtone. I love it.
Thanks, Bill. The end.
The preceding podcast is solely owned by its host or hosts and is distributed by Big Media LLC. Copyright 2025, all rights reserved.